Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to introduce you to Joan and Jeff Stanford, the proprietors of the Stanford Inn by the Sea. Nestled on the beautiful Mendocino Coast, the Stanford Inn is more than just a resort. It's a destination that invites guests to reconnect with nature, nurture their creativity, and embrace wellness. With its award-winning plant-based restaurant, organic farm, eco-friendly initiatives, and wellness programs, the Stanford Inn is truly North America's premier sustainable destination. In this inspiring conversation, Joan and Jeff share their remarkable journey into innkeeping, their commitment to sustainability and veganism, and how they've created a haven where guests can find joy, relaxation, and purpose. We'll also explore how they're educating visitors about the importance of wellness and conscious living. So, whether you're a fan of eco-friendly travel or just curious about how to live a more joyful and intentional life, you're going to love this conversation and want to schedule the Stanford Inn into your holiday travel plans. Let's get this party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stephanie Lahart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Well, continuing on to those places that I must visit on my personal travel guide, I have recently discovered the Stanford Inn and Resort, which is not far from me at all, being up in the northern coast of California on the Mendocino Bay. Actually, it is a historic farm, and when I found out about them, I was so excited to figure out who the owners were, first of all, and then talk to them about it. Because you guys know I am all about finding these really beautiful, ethical, sustainable, compassionate places that we can not only support, but we can go and take a little me time. And this seemed like the perfect place. So I'd like to welcome to the show today, Joan and Jeff of the Stanford Inn in the Mendocino Bay. Welcome to the show, you two.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to be here. And I love your mission. So congrats on that.
Thank you. You know, when I started this podcast, I did it rather selfishly. I really wanted to be able to find resources for myself and then share them with my family and friends. And I'm like, this would make a great podcast because, you know, I find that once you get very thoughtful about how you want to spend your time, your money, and your life, it takes a bit more planning rather than just, you know, the usual places. So when I found you again, the Stanford Inn, I was very excited. And I will let you know, I did find you on the PETA Business Network. And it really has been my go-to guide for all of the businesses and places, you know, that I really want to support. So can we talk a little bit first about what's your journey been as far as I really want to get your backstory. The inn is so beautiful. How did this all come about?
Well, it's actually, I'll start, Jeff, and then Jeff will jump in. We tend to talk a lot. But we came in 1980, so we're now in our 45th year of being here. And originally we were just, trying to find a place that we could be out in the country, in a rural setting, raise a family, kind of have an integrated lifestyle, because Jeff's background was anthropology, and he sort of idealized the family farm as the perfect way to live, because everybody had an important role to play in the system. And it was your work and life, family life, business life, everything was kind of all integrated, so that there weren't those, compartmentalizations that we have to do typically. So actually we found it quite accidentally. It's a whole story about how we got into it. But we came here, we'd been before at a small motel that we turned into an inn in Carmel, and that went south because we were involved with a crazy
Partners.
family.
Yeah.
And then, but some guests had told us you would love Mendocino. So we had actually come up here in the 70s and fell in love with it. I mean, just it felt you turn off 101 onto 128 if you're coming from the south, which we were, and it's like you enter another dimension. I mean, it was just magical. So actually it was very, I mean, almost like we was like fated that we would end up here.
I'm going to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the truth, there's a truth to this that we found when we came here. So in 1978, we came up here the first time and met friends of ours who had the Bimbo Inn, and taught us about innkeeping in Carmel before they left to go up there. And we did fall in love with it, but I had no idea we'd end up here. And then all hell came loose in Carmel. And by the way, it all got fixed. Took a few years.
Yeah.
But but it involved the kinds of things that it involves all the time in this area and throughout this country now, with the stuff that's available to people that they shouldn't take. Anyway, we came here, but we were like directed, and it was a very odd thing. First thing that happened is we planned a trip, and I think it was July or late June, to go down the coast to see if there was any properties. And of course, we had very little money, and we'd gotten some offers of help from our friends that had the Bimbo Inn, from Joan's parents, from two older ladies. We had some marvelous support.
Yeah.
But we came and we stopped we went down from Garberville to Terra Linda, and we stayed the night there so we could get an early start in the morning and go all the way up the coast. And we're really looking for a house to convert to a bed and breakfast inn. And Joan was eating soy nuts, a lot of them. So we got in the car. Oh, that was our next door neighbor in that Holiday Inn was Paul Newman. It was. And he liked our dog. We stayed at Holiday Inns because they took dogs.
Was it Terra Linda?
Yeah.
Anyway, it was in the Inn.
Yeah, it's now a 4-point Sheraton. But anyway, we got to meet him and rode down the elevator with him. We talked to him a little bit, but we talked about dogs. We didn't talk about what he did. He was there to race cars. Anyway, we went up. Joan couldn't stand the drive. She wasn't feeling good. We went straight back to Garberville, and guess what? She was pregnant with our first child.
And we were basically homeless. We were living with our friends in their little guest room with our dog and cat. And it couldn't have been, in my mind, the worst timing. But around that time, I happened to come across, and they used to be classified ads in the San Francisco Chronicle. And there was like a little 2-line ad for this property. And I mean, it wasn't the way it is now, but for the Big River Lodge in Mendocino. And we thought, well, we never saw that when we were looking over there, but we had driven, but it looked so big. It was not at all in our, in our sense of what we knew.
It wasn't the house that we.
But anyway, so we came over here to check it out, and we met with the owners in the Red House, which is still on the property, and that family still owns that. And Chuck, who had been a realtor, was our friend from the Bimbo, and he was with us. And he, in the middle of the conversation, mentioned I was pregnant, and I was mortified. I was just mortified. But that was why they wanted to sell to us, because a similar thing had happened to them when they first moved to Mendocino, and they really wanted to help us, and they did financially and all sorts of ways. They helped us, and so
my best friend and one of her best friends is their youngest son.
Yeah, of that family. Anyway, that's really how we got into it. And then, when we came, Jeff had an idea that we were going to develop it, like with a golf course, because it had land, which was the big thing.
Well, it had land next door. We'd have to.
And it also had permits to do things, which is rare on the coast. And so it had some advantages. But by 3 years into it or something, Jeff broke his hip, and we had done a lot of renovation.
No. But actually, a lot of things happened. But
okay, you go ahead.
But the first thing that happened really when we came here, I back then would do divination with the I Ching, which most of your listeners are not going to know what it is, but they can look it up. You have to understand Chinese agriculture about 300, 400, 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, perhaps. I don't know quite how long ago, but if you can visualize that way. I'd already seen the building in my head. And when we did drive by that, and before we knew that Joan was pregnant, I recognized it, but I thought there was no way that was the right building. And then when we did get here, and just any obstacle that might have been there started falling away. And we took possession actually just 44 and a half years and 1 month ago. We started hearing from it had been really an abalone fishing lodge. The abalone stuff went away all instantly. And then we started hearing from our guests, and they were telling us that something wonderful had happened to them. This was a very important place for them to stay. And it looked like a motel. I mean, but they were having these experiences, and they were giving us gifts to signify it. And in part because Joan was with child, shall we say, she was pregnant, and it wasn't hidden. And we had a really good.
And we were a young, like, couple, right? We were very young, and so I mean, in our 30s, and I think people kind of felt mentoring of us, like they were very. I mean, our guests were really wonderful, and then we start. Oh, go ahead. You were in the story there.
That's all right. I don't know where you were going, but anyway, so the result was Alex was born. Right after he was born, the land that we're sitting on right now, which is right in front of the inn, which was zoned to become like a strip mall. We had to buy it because it would have destroyed the view from the inn that we had. And we did that anyway by planting trees. We have planted hundreds of trees. In any case, that we had to make that work, and we made that work because
but the owner wouldn't sell us.
The realtor, it doesn't matter. I mean, the owner wouldn't sell us, so he was going to go to jail, and he had to. And so the result was that we needed some money, and to get that money, the realtors loaned us $100,000. That's a true story too. So they helped us get it. And the reason is they didn't want what they knew was going to come in this area. We did pay, because it kind of got into an auction. We ended up paying double what it was worth.
Just for this one section,
Yeah.
which has had the canoe, is now our canoe shop and bike shop and everything. But back then it was just canoes.
Back then it was closed.
Yeah, that's true.
But in any case, we got that. Kate was born 22 months after Alex, and we were coasting. Oh, and by the way, just to point out how wonderful people are, our head housekeeper at that time loaned us the money to pay the payroll that we couldn't afford to pay because we were buying that property below us. So I came into my office, which was just a table really in a room, and there was a check on it for $5,000 for us. And that was very nice. And she became she's from Kansas, and I'm originally from Kansas. And so she actually became like the grandmother for our kids.
And I wanted to just say too that, for the first 8 years, we lived in a unit. That was part of the reason that the original people couldn't sell, was they didn't want to sell their house. They just wanted to sell the property at the inn. And so we lived in a room, and then we took over a second unit when Alex was actually born. And then that became, that was where we lived. And that was it for the staff. It was the only, bathroom, the only kitchen and everything for the first, but it was a smaller operation then. We had 26 units, 25 units.
We're running 23 rooms because we took 2 of them ourselves.
Yeah, which you do not do in business.
Yeah, but we had no place to live. And so you want to get to the vegan part, to the veg, the compassionate part. We were kind of already there. I didn't like killing things, never have. Never realized that I was causing animals to be killed when I was eating meat. But in one day I went to feed. So I got Joan a llama for an anniversary present from up the road. And that llama and the other llamas by that time had to be fed. So I would go down every day and feed them on the lower part of the land, and where the gardens are now. And I decided to kind of leap over a fence, but I got hung up on a electrical wire, it used to have an electric fence on there. The former owners had an electric fence to keep animals out of their gardens. So, but they had turned that off when we bought it, and I got caught and I landed on my hip. I was out of commission for a while. And while I was out of commission, Joan was cooking tarragon chicken and I smelt it. And then I thought about the chicken and I was vegan. But vegan in the sense,
Vegetarian.
what, yeah, vegan in the sense that I would not kill an animal or harm one. I didn't know about eggs and dairy at that time.
I am
And
right there with you. I came later in my journey to that as well, which I think many people did. But yeah,
I never realized why people who were vegan never told me why they were vegan. I said, why don't
Because we used to
you?
think they were crazy. I mean, we really did. As a vegetarian, we thought, well, that's really extreme, you know.
Yeah, but eggs and dairy, how are you damaging animals? Then we found out. Nobody told us. How I found out is the Humane Society of the United States chose the dairy belonged to Clover Stornetta down the coast, which was their organic dairy, as the most humane dairy in the United States. I went on their website. That was in 2004 when they were websites then, and they said there's no way we can do dairy humanely. And that was, and I read it, and then I found out about the chickens like in the same evening when I was doing that, and became vegan at that time, instantly vegan. And the place we opened the restaurant in '96, and we made it it was instantly vegetarian, of course, because I don't believe in feeding people stuff that I wouldn't eat or I wouldn't feed my family. And so it was vegetarian. And then when we became vegan, it took a little longer to switch it, but we switched it and we lost a bunch of guests.
Yeah, it's hard, you know, because yeah, and I think going back to what you were saying when you did the intro, actually, I think it's the awareness. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest too, and on a meat and potato, and I never ever thought about, you know, where my food was coming from. Now there's so much more information available. So, you know, with clothing, with everything that, you know, you have to think, where's this coming from, what was involved, and the sustainability factor. So anyway, I think a lot of it is just exposing, and we have well, we'll get to that, I guess, but we have a very extensive bookstore in our lobby. And guests are always browsing there, and we really just try, and Jeff does the buying, but he tries to just pick titles that are sort of within our mission, if you like there's philosophical stuff, there's a lot of cookbooks and about, you know, how a lot of stuff about animals and the whole vegan world. So it's more like, if anyone's hungry for information, it's there. And then the newsletter we give our guests when they check in, it's like a little pamphlet, but it's got a lot of information, some of our story and you know, famous vegans and all the rest of it. So if people want it, it's there. But
yeah, and I think that's really important. And people receive that information, I think, a lot more easily when they feel like they've discovered it themselves. So
yeah,
you
That's
just
true.
make the material available and then they do a natural discovery and they're like, oh, and I will let you know, I credit Instagram with my vegan journey because I myself grew up in Philadelphia and I've told this story many times before. I never even saw a cow in person until I was 20 years old. I
yeah,
mean, I was so disconnected from, you know, how things were made, where food came from, how materials made, where did wool come from? I had no idea. Instagram has been my great teacher. So,
that's
you know,
great.
I went vegan back in 2016 because after I had seen the true story, the true horrors, the evil truth behind dairy in the egg industry, I was like, oh my God, do other people not know about this? So I
Yeah,
really did make it part of my mission like you did and part of my business where I'm like, I'm going to allow other people to discover this information as well because I don't think they know either because I don't think people are inherently mean or evil. I
no,
think we're just misinformed at this point. So when I found the Stanford Inn, I was like, what a beautiful way to be able to have a vacation with your family and enjoy your life, but also integrate all of these great mission-based and ethical, you know, ways of living like you both have. And I can see from both of you, it's so ingrained in what you believe in and how you live. I want to just touch back really quickly on your entrepreneur journey because you mentioned when you had the idea you wanted to start an inn, that your money and your funding came from many different avenues and paths. And that's important too. And can you speak a little bit just from being entrepreneurs um, about why you decided first you wanted to open an inn, and then when you were looking for the funding, you know, where did you first look besides these places where it seemed money was being handed to you? And what would you suggest to other people who wanted to start a journey of like, I want to create a place like the Stanford Inn? So
Okay.
speak a little bit about your entrepreneur journey.
Okay, so everything exists in some form, in time someplace. So what happened, just to understand that, in 1975, I'd finished a master's degree in anthropology, and I was in a very esoteric area of it, and I could either continue with the PhD. I'd actually written the thesis already. Hard to explain how I would have done that, but it did happen. And and my mother called. We were living in Winnipeg, and it is so cold in the summertime, in the wintertime, and very hot actually in the summertime. And she called and said, I want to buy an inn as an inflation hedge. There was stagflation in the United States, and this was Carmel, which was a major destination in those days. And that's where she lived. And she asked if I would take it over. I was handy. I could fix things, but and set it up for management, not to become a manager or anything like that, but be the person that did it. So we thought we had decided like 2 years before that on a trip to the West Coast that we wanted to live on the West Coast, Canadian or American, it didn't matter where. So we go, yeah, we'll do that. And so we drive down, I drive down there. Joan did the trip with her parents first. And then we got busy with it. And so we found that we could do, I hated it. I was pushing a rollaway up a sidewalk on the street in Carmel one time, and I go, I don't like this job at all. But then I got to know the guests, and they were wonderful, and they were the people.
We would never meet. I mean, you got all walks of life. If you're in
Yeah.
a career, you tend to, it's a little bit lateral. But in innkeeping, people come from all over the world, all different professions for different reasons. Sometimes it's happy to celebrate. Sometimes it's grieving. They're going to throw ashes, or they've lost a partner. So the whole spectrum of life experience kind of comes in and out your door. It's like a movie in a way. I mean, and it's always changing. I hated it too. We never intended to become innkeepers, but that's where we got thrown to. And then we met these good friends we've already mentioned, and that pulled us up here. But to address the thing, you have to have really good friends and some friends that have money. I would say that's a really good thing. You have to have, we didn't have a business plan.
But you're forgetting something. The big thing she's forgetting is bed and breakfast inns were just coming in.
Yes, and we had experience. So these people wanted us to do this. I mean, we did have
We got the experience in Carmel by taking a motel type place, fixing it up really nicely, and making it a bed and breakfast inn.
Yeah.
And then we got recognized by a major writer on bed and breakfast inns as he introduced the whole concept to California, to the West Coast essentially. A guy named Norman Simpson who wrote. Yes, Joan. She's signaling me.
No. I was just going to say you might know because he was from the Berkshires, wasn't he?
Yeah, his name was Norman Simpson. He wrote Country Inns and Back Roads and then Bed and Breakfast American Style. He was an entrepreneur. He created Independent Innkeepers Association, which is now called Select Registry, and it's run by the innkeepers. It's more on the East Coast now, but but he created that, and he kind of even mentored us, stayed with us, and talked to us about it because he really liked what we were doing. Like we got off the road one time and said, "Gee, wouldn't it be nice we should have been able to have wine at these motels and places. We always had to stay."
And we always had a dog, so we wanted to be dog friendly.
Yeah,
we wanted to be able to just pull in and enjoy a glass of wine. So we had carafes of wine in the place we had. We did things that were, not as common back then, but really it was, I think when somebody, I was talking about this with Jeff earlier, because we saw, thinking about it, and it's like, I think if you have a desire, like if you, this is a patience about this, but if you have a vision or something you really want to do, a strong intention. And I do think if you're totally committed to that, you don't get over thinking it, and you don't get really fearful or start to have a lot of doubts, but you just kind of trust that this is what you want to do. I honestly do think the support comes, financial, mentoring, whatever, different things come to you. I mean, that was our experience. We're not really addressing your question, but
all the things that Joan says are true. And the added part where I was just going with that was that we had proven ourselves in a brand new industry in this state as really the youngest innkeepers that we were bed and breakfast innkeepers. So people believed in us. that really helped. And we didn't set anything up, as Joan just said, and I think that's really important. People actually showed up that would help us that when we needed the help.
Yeah. And that continued. I mean, people would come and say, are you interested in having me offer massage? Long before we had a massage program in the studio. And she would come with her little table and go in the rooms. That wasn't common then. And then,
Well, that was, just to give you an idea, that was more than 30 years ago in 1989-90. And she was a sociologist from the University of Ohio, but got into massage because she was Thai. And
tiny.
And tiny, but a Thai lady. And I think she'd recently gotten a divorce. And she started just doing massages with us. We're probably the first and only bed and breakfast inn for a number of years that offered massage. We built a massage studio out of our gardening and out of our garden shed. And we still have it, only it's expanded, and it's very nice. And eventually she retired to go take care of her mother, and she retired in her about 70 herself. But she was here for 20 years. And then right after she came, we opened a pool in 1991, and a local yoga instructor came and said, "Can I do yoga around your pool?" And we started doing yoga, and we had yoga classes from 1991 until we're now got a complete program. Yeah.
But so it's been very much a co-creative thing,
Yeah.
all along. And the reason we opened the restaurant was because, some people that were local wanted to, cook for us. I mean, it was a lot of it is, I think, an openness to adding, to expanding. And again, like Jeff said, we didn't want to serve things we wouldn't eat ourselves, but we also, we took our own interests got integrated into the inn. So we wanted, like, organic gardening came in as a landscape solution, but it was because we wanted to do something that was healthy for the planet. And, different things came that we were committed to, I guess, ourselves. And then someone would come, like Jeff said.
No, generally they came before we knew they were, before. So before we knew that it was going to happen. Like, for example, the gardening. So that time that I hurt my hip and I couldn't walk and I became essentially vegan, in terms of philosophy, I was definitely vegan. And we had a huge landscaping problem. We had just that year put in a new septic field, a huge septic field that I was supposed to run the job, but the youngest son of the former owners, he ran the job for us because I couldn't do it, because I couldn't walk around like that. Anyway, and then we were talking one day about how we're going to landscape down here. And I was thinking, like, well, do just a huge flower garden and we can put the flowers in the rooms, because we were buying flowers for the rooms in Carmel and doing that, but we never were able to get that going here. And he said, why don't we do vegetables? So we did vegetables. He was absolutely right. It was a great idea. And we used a technique from a guy named John Jevons. He wrote how to grow more vegetables in a space smaller than ever thought possible and with less water than ever thought possible. He wrote that like in the mid-70s. It's in its 9th edition now, and it works. The technique works. We got 2 Kenyans learning it right now. And they'll take it back and do work with the subsistence farmers in Kenya. But we've had them from all over the world, really, from Sri Lanka to Germany to all over South America and Latin America, Middle America, and the Asian countries, and a lot from Africa.
And your Ravens restaurant actually has received national acclaim for its plant-based cuisine. So are you then saying that all of the vegetables that you grow are what you use for the restaurant?
We use everything we can grow and a lot more. So, so we buy from a jobber, it's called Veritable Vegetable, down in San Francisco, where all of these growers send everything and then they ship it up here. We used to actually have stuff picked up here before we were using it ourselves and taken down there. It works for us. Our menu is inspired by what we can grow here. And but some stuff like citrus and all that we can't grow very good. We can grow Meyer lemons, but we get it from other parts of California.
Yeah.
And what are some of your signature dishes that you really stand out for you, that if somebody comes to the restaurant, you're like, you must try this?
Yes.
Well, for breakfast, I can speak to breakfast, which is included. We do a wonderful all organic cook to order breakfast, and it's quite extensive because we want all those people that really want bacon and eggs to enjoy it. And most, I think a lot of them give it a good try, and most do seem to like it. But for breakfast, people seem to like the portobello.
The Portobello Benedict,
Portobello Benedict, and the citrus polenta. Those are the two.
No.
Not the citrus? Oh.
No, we have.
Okay, never mind.
We don't have citrus polenta anymore. We haven't for about 15 years. You're just using the old name.
Oh, sorry, different name. Yes.
Different name. It's a savory polenta now with like dried tomatoes in it, like that, sun-dried tomatoes in it. I consider it much better because the sauce is less sweet, and I changed it a few years ago.
I'm sorry.
She doesn't eat breakfast very often.
No, I don't. I just have a green smoothie. I'm a very big green smoothie fan. So,
well, breakfast is my favorite meal of the day. So I would be very excited about that. But when people ask me what I eat, they seem mystified. They're like, oh my God, what do you eat? It's almost thinking if you don't eat animal products, there's nothing to eat. Where I found my food repertoire and my palate greatly expanded when I became vegan. And I eat such a variety of different foods and interesting foods. And people get very caught in like, well, if you don't have, like you said, eggs and bacon for breakfast, what else could there possibly be? And I have all kinds of things. I have different, like you said, savory risottos and quinoa dishes and maybe smoothies. And I feel like my life was really enriched when I really started to, look for different instead of what I had been trained in. And I think that's something, I'm sure that your guest also, discover. So tell me, like, how do you engage with guests who might not be familiar with a plant-based lifestyle? Like, have you seen instances during a stay where, they really got inspired by what you offered them? Like, oh, I really would like to try this or make more conscious lifestyle choices.
Yeah, so it does happen. It does happen. It's rarer than we would like, but 95% of our guests are not even vegetarian. So a lot of them are coming here and they're willing to try. So they're already open-minded, and they will sometimes engage us in discussions, but not necessarily because we don't know, and we don't go and I'll go through the dining room occasionally and say, how's dinner, or if they're leaving, or breakfast. And by the way, you were asking the breakfast dishes. One of the ones is, I want to say, is a savory crepe, that's stuffed with vegetables with a chimichurri sauce, but instead of using oil, we use avocado, and that sauce is really great. And we get a lot of good comments on that. Yeah. And the Portobello Benedict was basically on English muffins. We often make those ourselves, and it's sliced portobello, and it's like one of the most expensive breakfasts that we produce, but a lot. It's a huge seller. Only we're not getting money for it.
But I wanted to say something. If you're done, are you done? He's never done. Okay, I just wanted to say one of the ways we engage with the guests is obviously this newsletter type thing we give them that they at check-in, so they can read that if they wish at leisure, and then the books that expose them. And then we have classes. If they're really interested, they can sign up, for a nutrition class or cooking class. And that also would give them, one of them includes, how do you go to the store? What do you have in your pantry? Basic things if you're switching or transitioning. Because what we do find, what I hear a lot, are people are not necessarily full throttle, but they're easing away from their traditional diet and they're bringing more in. So they do want that information. Like you're saying, they want to expand their repertoire, and Meatless Monday maybe was one thing, but now it's like Meatless Week. So they want to have other things. And some of them, we get a lot of families, because it's younger, sometimes the clientele, and they really want to know the healthiest food to give their kids, because you can be very unhealthy, and vegan and very unhealthy. So, the whole food, plant-based type approach is what we do here.
Well, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, the bookstore. The bookstore is not a propaganda place. We have a very few books on that. We'll have Dr. Greger's books. And I've met him a few times, and he's really a good researcher. If you ever read his books, he's a good researcher. So anybody that really wants to know stuff, I said, and look at these books, and then check out his sources. Sorry. Secondly, that's what I get for eating walnuts. Secondly, the books are mostly about science and empowering kids to go into what they call STEM now. But I love science. I've been reading physics ever since I heard about physics, and since I was in physics in high school, and they're really about that. And we have a lot of empowering women books simply because some of the top discoveries made in the world of physics and cosmology were by women, and men took the credit for it. But the stories are great. Like we have that book, it's called, for example, which is called Messages or something from Planet 3. It's a great book. These kinds of things, but we're really there. The bookstore is to inspire, not to propagandize.
Right, that's true.
And
lots on creativity.
yes, lots on creativity. Joan has a creative arts workshop, and it's emerged from her process as dealing as an registered art therapist. This is not about therapy, but it's about having fun with art, because to get kids loose and to get adults loose in a therapeutic session, they've got to be willing to play with art. And but what she found I don't know when, I wasn't there because these are private sessions, but she found that people really got caught up in the joy of just doing art. And then she doesn't have to do the therapy part of it, because that's
And I
not what they're
never
there for.
ever offered it as therapy. It was always just I called them play shops, and it was just an opportunity to express yourself with creative material, different things. And it was never, but doing anything fun is always therapeutic, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, people do really, and I am going to be having a 3-day retreat at the end of the month. It's the first one I've offered, but people have asked, boy, it would be really great to be able to do this more than one time, because they're just like a 2-hour session. So
Yep.
I'm really hoping that people get a lot out of that.
So I want to say something. We're talking about, how to get money and do all this stuff. It's not about that for us. We're it's sort of like we want to spread the joy. There is joy in not having to have something in the back of your head that I'm making some bad decisions here and something's suffering. I'm doing a wedding and we're going to have an animal sacrifice. It kind of will penetrate your head as a totally non-vegan or vegetarian person when you start talking about, a big bunch of stuff like, prime rib. It bothered me. So I was ready when I switched, when I realized I couldn't do that. But and if you just have some self-awareness, and if you do some meditating, and I had started meditating when my dad introduced it to me, and when I was 18, I found that making a choice of not eating animals freed energy I didn't know was tied up. And that's a very joyous thing, because if you're then observant, because that's the nature of meditation, you start actually seeing and experiencing things that other people may not notice in their lives, because it's in all our lives, but most people don't notice it. And so how do you attract people? Well, you're going to live longer. That doesn't work because we're self-destructive. But joy in itself, just for the sake of joy and being joyous and having people that work for you that are joyous and happy to help our guests and all that, that has been transformative for a lot of people that come here. They tell us later about it. They have epiphanies. We don't know the nature of an epiphany. It's instantaneous. It's a realization. But from those epiphanies, change comes, and people like to talk about that to us. And we get these really remarkable stories, which I'm not going to share now, but because they're personal. But it's all about joy, and I'm sorry that we've gotten kind of off of that path. But going out in a canoe. So we have these. I haven't been in one of our canoes except to be in it, but I haven't gone up that river in a long time, since before COVID. But it is a wonderful experience, particularly if you're not racing and you have to get back and all the stuff that somebody that owns the business does. But when I go up there with Joan in the past or with the kids, it was and is a great experience. It's the kind of stuff, or bicycling in the woods or just walking in the woods. Those are the kinds of things that bring joy, and yet they don't cost a lot. Right. I mean, to get here and stay here, it costs money, but to go and do these things, you can do them anywhere. You can do them any park or, outlying area in a rural area easily. And there is joy in doing it.
And
Just
I want to PS to what he's saying here. I'm sorry, but we're probably off the topic again. But what I wanted to say was that I think when we talk about sustainability, it's not just sustaining the planet, it's sustaining ourselves, our own vital energy. And I think we learned a long time ago, because actually as younger people, we smoked and we knew all the literature about smoking and how bad it was. So I do understand when people hear about some of the awful stuff with animals, but it doesn't make them change. I do understand that what causes the change, what triggers a change has to come, from the head and the heart. It's not necessarily rational responding to information. There's something else that triggers, I want to live differently, or I want to be differently, or whatever. But I think that what Jeff's talking about is really important, because if you're doing something, but the doing of it isn't fun, or it's a challenge, like if you told, we actually were on a podcast with a doctor who had patients that, had major heart stuff. And she made them enroll in her like 5 or 6 week course about healthy living. And she was vegan. And they did it, but they kept saying, and when will this be over? Because they wanted to go back to their destructive lifestyle. So she was saying it's so hard for people to recognize that so you can't, like Jeff was saying, you can't do it just for health. Like, I'm going to do this because I'd be healthier. You have to do it for a bigger reason. And in Jeff's case, and I kind of follow. He should get the credit for a lot of what happens here, really. And
a lot of that, honestly, is just breaking habits too. Like we grow up with habits, and that's the way we live our lives. I never smoked, but there was a period in my life where I drank pretty heavily. And I found when I decided I wanted to quit drinking, I had to replace my habit of having a cocktail at a certain time with a different habit. So for me, I got very into very fancy exotic teas, and that became my little ritual. So I really love that, you've created this beautiful luxury resort style, but then you also have all these great outdoor adventures where people can really, connect with nature and build new habits, because that's what it comes down to. And I think you've really done a beautiful job of that. I know that you have a lot of wellness programs at the inn. You mentioned yoga and the forest stuff. So do you really feel that contributes to the overall experience that you're aiming for with the guests? Like, is that very intentional, that you want to give them that full feeling of, being rejuvenated, both mind, body, everything?
Right. That I would have said those exact words. Like, I think that's the critical piece of the wellness is that it's not just about the diet. I mean, that's a huge chunk of it, but it's about how you feel about how you're living your life, and are you, how your social relationships are, how you connect to the community and the bigger world, and feeling that you have a purpose, there's meaning in your life. And I think a lot of people just start to feel like, oh, it's hopeless. It's like a terrible situation, the world and the climate and the wars, and you can get so heavy and down with that. So I think the wellness programs, like I said earlier, they help to re-energize and sustain us in living our lives. Our first package we offered here was called Falling in Love with Life Again. And the premise was we wanted people to, like you just said, body, mind, soul, heart, spirit, whatever. We wanted them to go away from here feeling like that was the best vacation, or I just feel like life is worth living again. Because a lot of our people have really intense, high-pressured lives, and they need that break. And it's hard for most of us to give ourselves a break. And so why not do it at a place that gives back to you? Like you were saying at the intro, like how we make decisions about what to do with our time and money does impact the planet big time. And so, I mean, I'm not trying to say come here, I am trying to say come here, but I do think it gives people back something they didn't expect to get. And Jeff spoke a little bit to that with the stories they tell us. And I just got a letter this morning from a woman that was here last weekend, and she was saying, thank you. I mean, and people do say that. Thank you for creating a place that feels like home and feels like I don't have any conflict about what I'm doing there. I don't feel like I feel good. And that ultimately, that's the joy part, the joy piece. So.
But we don't really know her, but but she did state, I'm an ardent vegan in
Yeah.
that letter. And
that makes a huge difference.
that makes a huge difference because already she's in it. But as you know, she's in the right direction. But as you know, a lot of vegans are doing it because they're afraid of death. They are, they really are, and they become really adamant about no sugar, oil, or salt. We can easily comply with that, but it's it's for the wrong reason. That, to my way of it's, I'm me, and the rest of the world doesn't matter. I'm going to take care of me, and they become really belligerent in the dining rooms and places like that. We've seen that, a lot of it, and we don't. That's not what we're looking for, and that's not what we're doing. We think you can be healthy eating badly. It's a mental condition. It's how you process the food. You can turn, if you're an angry person, you can turn a carrot hot dog into the worst meat type hot dog in terms of what it does to your body. And I do believe that. I do believe that it's all about the mind. The body's in the mind, and we can negatively affect it. So these people that are so adamant and so angry, they're already sick. But what we're finding is that, and this is really good, in this vegan world now, there are not as many vegans as people would like, probably around 4%, if that many in the population, and they're not always. Some of those guys are actually happy. They feel relieved. They're not doing it for their health or for the planet. They're doing it because it makes them feel good. Yeah, and that's really where it's at. And when you do it, and if it doesn't make you feel good, then you should think about why that's true. And I don't want to, cause, anybody listening to this to get all self-analytical. That's not what we're talking about. Find a joy in what you're doing is what we're talking about. And
yeah, I totally agree with that. It is about finding that joy. And, honestly, I think in a lot of ways, because we shy away from the true cruelty aspect of the meat industry and the fashion industry, that people can then make those, those discussions or those conversations in their mind, those arguments saying, well, it's okay because of this. And the true nature of it is, it's not about just your health. It's about you. We don't have to be cruel like that. We don't have to, so viciously kill animals, decimate the planet, and do things like that for our own luxury, for our own convenience. In a lot of ways, I think we have really convenienced ourselves into a state of disgrace almost. So I like what you're saying there, Jeff, because I do think people should be analytical. I think they should be intentional. I think they should think about their choices and things like that, because you can have a beautiful, joyful life like you both have built for yourself, living within, a space of not harming, causing less harm to those around you than before. So, I thank you for starting somewhere like the Stanford Inn, but I have to just ask you, so for the people that are out there and they're planning their holiday vacations, because we're right around that time, I wanted to make sure that they had options like the Stanford Inn to be like, hey, that's somewhere I'd like to go. It's a beautiful luxury resort, but then I'd also have all these different programs and activities and fun things I can do and maybe learn a little bit about myself. So tell me, as someone who's never been to your inn before, what would a typical day be for someone like me? So I come up there as a solo traveler. What could a day at the Stanford Inn look like for Stephanie?
I would say that you would wake up and you'd go to your deck. All the rooms have private decks, and you'd breathe in the most wonderful world in the air. We're right on the Pacific coast, and it's absolutely the best air. And you would just breathe in and take a moment.
Wait a second, I can't let that one go. She said, breathe in the most wonderful world in the air. In a way.
Did I?
Yes.
Oh.
In a way.
My mind goes faster than my tongue.
Yeah. Anyway, in a way, it's really absolutely true. You are breathing in the world when you breathe this in. Now we've got 3,000 miles of air purification going on before the air from Japan reaches us.
So wait a minute, I wanted to get to my other point. My other point is, so you're standing there, it's beautiful. The air is, well, assuming it's not pouring rain, which is also nice, but it's beautiful. It's a lovely view. There's gardens or there's ocean, whatever you're looking at. And the main thing is, Stephanie, you're taking a moment just to be with yourself. It's a brand new morning, brand new day. What am I going to do today? And all the options are there, whatever you want to do. But then you're going to maybe if you're really motivated, you might go to the workout room, or you might just go directly to breakfast in the lobby. And on the way to breakfast, you're going to pass the cheerful us on the front desk. And then and then you're going to maybe see, oh, I really should pick up that book and look at that book on your anyway. And then you'll have breakfast, and it's leisurely. You don't have to rush. There'll be some dogs because we have a section that's pet friendly that the people with pets will be eating in, and you'll pet our lobby cat. And after breakfast, maybe you'll decide what you're going to do with the day. You might ask us for suggestions. We have hiking maps we can give you or suggest walks, the different classes, the yoga times. You usually get that at check-in, like what's going on right now. You might want to go to the pool, soak in the hot tub. You might borrow a bike, canoe. We talked about those things. So really you could do whatever you want, or you might just stay in the room and relax, because that to me is what a lot of people, they're so overscheduled, and they think they have to fill every minute, but it's the empty spaces that are sometimes the most nourishing. Or you might do a class with me or Sid or somebody, Jeff, and you're going to meet some people just walking around that you like, and you're going to enjoy the gardens.
Well, that sounds perfect for me. I will let you know I am an activity girl. I overschedule everything. I always try to maximize my time. So for me to sit down and relax and take in, that's hard for me. I've tried meditating and never been very successful at it. So
That's why
I would love to be in a space like that where it'd be like, no, Stephanie, you don't have to do anything. Just sit on the balcony and relax. And by the way, I will be bringing my dog with me, so I'm excited about that.
one of the best things about the changes that we started making, I was still in my 30s when that happened, and is that you get to learn all this new stuff. And even in your 30s, you're wondering, because I was an academic, you go, I get to learn all this new stuff. I get to learn how to cook this way. I think that's really wonderful for people to learn something new, like learning how to cook vegan. So the microbiome stuff started coming out about 12, 15 years ago. And I was reading all that. And what's his name? Ornish's, Dean Ornish has had done three really cool things. He was involved with Pritikin and getting rid of heart disease in patients and found out that it worked. He then got involved with prostate cancer and found out that that worked. I remember when they were advertising for prostate cancer victims for doing this interventional study at UC San Francisco. He was doing that, and it was so successful they had to stop it. And then the next one he did was Alzheimer's. Did you hear about that one?
No.
Check Dean Ornish on Alzheimer's. Reverses it
Oh.
with the diet. But the diet that he reverses it with is based on what I could envision. And this all happened in the last 30 years, what people were eating. And so luckily I'd gone to Hawaii, so I could imagine a Rift Valley. And we're not talking about humans as we are now, not Homo sapiens or Homo neanderthal, but Homo erectus and earlier, and way earlier. And they were pulling leaves off of plants, eating all the fruit that was available, and then tubers and the leaves and stems and the rest of it when they couldn't find fruit. And that was safer than dealing with tigers and stuff like that. And they were living in a place like Hawaii where there was abundance of stuff growing, and there weren't abundant human beings at that time. When the human population grew, they got pushed into areas where the only thing that could eat what was there were animals themselves until the advent of agriculture. Mm-hmm. And so all of it made sense to me. And that's when I started writing my own recipes to a very large degree and converting to a whole foods plant-based diet here. And that was exciting. I mean, we'd go to the lake because Joan's from Canada, and I adopted Winnipeg as my home city, even though I was born south of there. I love that place. I love the people there. I really do. When we go up there and we have a kitchen in this very seasonal cabin, and I would create new dishes there because I could do that. I had the time. And Joan was the test subject.
Yes.
And all our family, there's a lot of family.
Always happy to be the test subject.
Yeah. But that's the best. See, when you embrace change, there's embracing your life as it is to allow change, then you embrace change. And when you do that, you grow. All of a sudden, it isn't so bad that you don't have a turkey for Christmas or Thanksgiving.
But just to kind of close out our conversation, I've had such a lovely time hearing from your, about your journey and talking with you both. Just give me one bit of advice that you might share with somebody who is an entrepreneur, not necessarily starting an inn, but you touched on it a little bit before, like just one piece of advice for someone who's deciding, I want to start my own business, or I want to try something different than the 9 to 5. What's your one bit of advice for them?
I would advise that they, first of all, try everything that they're interested in. Sometimes they're going to have to say, I need to take a day off from an existing job, but try it all out. Try it all out without feeling like that huge pressure to make a decision and do that. Take the pressure off, because that lets room in. What we do is too often demand from ourselves a direction and information, and or demand from ourselves a sudden inspiration for what we want in a life. We don't know, but we don't like what we've got now. And one of the things you do, it's ironic, but it's true, embrace what you have right now. So your argument with it sort of ceases for a moment, and other things can come in, and everything starts changing. But you really have to embrace it. You have to admit, I don't know what I want, but I've got this. I must have wanted it at some time, because I've got it, and I made the decisions to get here, and embrace it. And then that opens the door to change. And the change is always there, but if you're fighting what you're doing, and you don't like it, and you don't want to go home, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that, you have to embrace those things so that they're no longer the blocks to you. There's nobody else that's going to do it. And no therapy, I'm sorry, Joan, but no therapy is going to get you there. You have to start making decisions based on, I've got this, I'm going to not fight it anymore, and then I can move on. Because you're talking about people that want to make changes. Usually it's not because they see something they're inspired to make the change. They want to make a change from something. What they want to do is get to their position so that they can embrace something else. But you've got to start by embracing what life you have now. It works. I've seen it work, because I've used to do counseling, and it's one of the things I talk about. Embrace what you've got now. There's no other way to start.
I'm right there with you. You are speaking my language. I am a firm believer in manifestation. I've been practicing it myself for many years. And then also, like you said, really just enjoying and appreciating where you're at in your life too. I think we often get caught up in, like, what's next, instead of looking around and be like, you know what, I've created a really beautiful life for myself. I'm happy with it now. So we do have to wrap this up, but please let everyone know that's listening where they can find you. Give us your website, and any other information, maybe about some upcoming not trips, but sorry, promotions or plans that you have for the resort, just so people know. Because like I said, I really want people to be able to book for this holiday season. So give us your website, and give us any kind of, packages you have coming up right now.
Well, the website's easy, stanfordinn.com, and it's spelled like the university. And that'll get you there. And then in terms of packages, they're online. Joan's whatever. Our retreat starts, I think, October 28th.
I think it's the 24th.
Oh, 24th.
It's a Thursday.
And there's a couple of openings on that right now. Somebody had to back out, and something came up.
And then the Mendocino, the county has a festival, the Harvest Festival. It used to be called the Mushroom Festival. That comes up in November, when people can go out and look for mushrooms and things. And
they
then
can't necessarily pick them. We always got to be careful.
They need permits.
That you need permits to do that. But we do take people out on mushroom tours so they can see them, understand where they grow.
And we integrate or we augment the menu with mushroom dishes. So anyway, most of this information is on the website. If you wanted to contact either one of us individually, it's just our first name at stanfordinn.com. And yeah, we're happy to talk to people that are thinking about doing anything. And I just think the whole thing what Jeff was saying about asking for advice, I think you really have to know what you feel you're good at and what you could feel really good doing. And then, hopefully that pushes you in the direction that, or calls that direction to call you, if you like what I mean.
And by the way, the reason I'm distracted a little bit is
our dogs.
The dogs are bothering me.
Yeah, they're saying, get off, get off.
There's one
Yeah.
leash right there.
I think that's the sign that it's time for us to go. Again, thank you both so much for being on the podcast and sharing your story. Like I said, I was really moved when I, first discovered the inn and I read all about you, and I just couldn't wait to talk to you both. So thank you so much. And I really can't wait to come up and visit you and,
Thank you. We
see
look
everything you have
forward
to
to that.
offer.
And I hope you're a really good editor.
I am.
Good.
Thank you very much. Have a
Thank you.
great
It's
day.
nice meeting you this
Thank
way.
you.
Besides just in print. It's
Bye-bye.
nice to see you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.